Okay, we are live now. Uh, uh,
Hi.
Hi, welcome back, Miss Loretta. This is the fourth and most probably the final hour of our QA session. Okay, now last previous session we discussed about your inner mammal institute.org/method, where you have 20 steps of the inner mammal and its method, and the deep insight you have summarized into 20 points. And last session we went with 5 questions. Now I'd like to continue with few other questions. So your my first question for today is, in your seventh point in the list, you have said, I can design a new experience and repeat it until a new pathway builds. The electricity in my brain will have a new place to flow. But my question is, what happens to the old pathway? How can we even select? Because whenever a situation arises, uh, the the response which come, or even the recognition and the way it happens, is all automatic. It's not even conscious. So now how can I choose, like, if I've seen my enemy or my old friend, whatever the response, it will come automatically. But if I see my an enemy, let us assume the person who insulted me, or with whom I had a fight, is it possible to create a new circuit when I meet him next time, and then respond with him with a smile?
Okay, so simple, short answer, and then we'll go into more details. But the old circuit will always be there, but you can stop your electricity from flowing into it. So
Okay.
when you see this person,
Yeah.
if you want to just stop and not have your true reaction, that's hard. We all know that's hard. So the first thing is, if you can build your new reaction in advance.
Okay.
And when you build that new reaction in advance, you sort of plan it when you're in a better mood to say, well, what reaction would I like to have to this person?
Okay.
So I'm not saying, like, if this person has been bad to you, I'm not saying that you should smile and ignore your feelings and love them. But
Okay.
let's say that this person is just making you nervous because they remind you of your own weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can build a new circuit that says, I'm comfortable with my weaknesses because everyone has weaknesses. We have strengths too. I don't have to blame this person for my weaknesses, however you want to explain it. And
Okay.
then when you see them, it's so easy to go into the old behavior, especially it's the myelinated pathway from your childhood. So that's why you have to repeat the new response a lot. So let's say if you have a group of people that you often see that make you nervous, let's just say. So then you plan in advance. Okay, before I go to those people, I'm going to have a lot of practice thinking my alternative thought. For example, I'm okay, you're okay. You know, I can put myself up without putting them down. I don't have to imagine that they're putting them down. Or maybe if that person really did do bad to me, that I'm making the decision, you know what? I think we should talk about the bad thing they did to me. Or maybe if I think, oh, that person's never going to change, I don't want to see them anymore, that's also a possibility. So we can, maybe your old circuit says, oh, you can't really express your anger, but maybe your new circuit could say, I can manage my anger in a new way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Then there's lots of homework every person has to do to come in terms with that person. How should I behave next time the situation comes when I meet him? So there's lots of conscious effort is involved. Is it like, like these days they say, like, you should forgive people, you should come in terms with people, don't leave any so is that gratitude and that forgiveness and all those things are also involved here in some way?
Well, like I said, you get to decide. I'm not preaching gratitude and forgiveness. I'm aware that other people are. I'm preaching authenticity.
Okay.
So so that may be different. I mean, we have this concept that forgiveness is for yourself and you're better off in the long run, even if
Yeah.
you're angry at them in the short run. So that's fine. But many people take it to the extreme where they let someone mistreat them and then they do it again and again and again. And I'm not advocating that at all. What I'm advocating is if you're letting someone mistreat you, take responsibility for your own choice of letting them do it. And then if you have that feeling of that you want to have a different reaction and you say, oh, well, I can't have a different reaction. You have to plan the reaction in advance. So what would be the different reaction? It's not like either I have to bow down to them or get angry and go into a rage. There's many other options. So you could design your option in advance and then practice it so that it feels more natural. So one example would be to say, the next time I see that person, I'm not going to agree when they do this or say this because my own opinion is that. And either they're going to listen to my opinion in a reciprocal exchange, or I'm just going to say that I'm too busy. That's just an example of how to have authenticity without getting into a fight.
Okay. So lots of pre-planning and building a right mental model. How do I behave with this person and the other person? So this calls for doing lots of homework in advance then.
Yeah. And part of the homework, it's not really about that person. It's about your own early experience that built the pathway that says, this is the way you need to respond to people. And when you realize, oh, yeah, that's my usual response. That's how I react to anybody who says this. And then when someone says that, then I always go into that response. So when you take responsibility for your own circuits, then what I think of is like a road, and the road will always be there, but you have a choice of whether you turn onto that road.
Okay. So you are creating a choice in advance so that at that situation when it is happening, then you can respond with a choice. You need not respond the same old way. You've done your homework, you got another choice, so you can choose.
Right. And just knowing that you have a choice, you feel better already because you don't feel like a victim.
Okay.
Right.
Super. Okay. So I mean, I'm just correlating with the other theories also, which I've read and heard about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is my small complication. So
yes. Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Because even what Buddha says is, don't react but respond to the situation, right? So that's what he says. And there's one famous story where in a village, some people will give him fruits. Then if his tummy is full, he'll say, I don't want it. Another village, people spit at him, use bad words. Then he will say, I'm not accepting this, right? I'm not reacting to you people. I have the choice to respond. So and you want to respond always in a friendly way, right? By default. So you are saying we have always a choice, and that it is better to be prepared with the choice in advance to a potential situation. That will always help the person. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, preparing the choice in advance is just easier because your old circuit is so powerful that it's hard to steer away. If you need a new road to steer into before you can avoid the old road.
Okay, but in that situation, in the external world, uh, what Buddha uses the word Maitri, which just means be friendly. When you're reacting, always be friendly and with a smile, and don't bring anger and all. He says, but there might be some situation we may have to show anger also, like show, not to slap him or kick him, but in the voice if you show, then maybe he will respond and wake up. Then he will recognize his mistake, that is troubling us. So there we should have that sensibility instead of blindly always as the spiritual people say, instead of blindly always smiling or always being friendly, there might be some situation where we may have to show anger, so that at least the other person is aware, right? Like one response doesn't fit all the situations.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I
Okay.
ask you,
Yeah.
what was Buddha's native language? Was it Sanskrit or
Pali.
Hindi?
Pali.
Oh, Pali.
Pali.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that was the language. Even though all the knowledge and information was in Sanskrit language, which is the language spoken by the uh, knowledgeable people. Pali was the layman's language,
Okay.
which these rulers and villagers used. And then Buddha, most of his time, he was actually, all these knowledgeable people hated Buddha because he broke all of their status quo. Right? He said, like, don't believe in God unless you know it, and there's no soul. Be good, do good, react in a good way, is what he said. So now, so many of those Sanskrit people hated him, and he want to reach everybody. So all the laymen also, and the kings also, and everyone. So he used mostly Pali language, which is not spoken by much people anymore. Even Sanskrit is not spoken by people, even though it's like Greek and Latin, like it's an old language. People don't use it.
Well, what I'm interested in is because I would always hear this, don't react but respond. But this is an English distinction, and it's very tiny. It's really become a cliche because in English the words mean almost the same thing. It's just that advice has changed the meanings. But I'm curious, in the original language, were these two words having any other meanings?
Might be, for sure. And Buddha, even though these are two words, Buddha, while speaking, he speaks like voluminous. For 40 years he was speaking. There is, like, I don't know, maybe tens and thousands of pages worth of book. Yes, when it's translated to word, then react is immediate react, like no questions asked, like just
Okay.
and respond means look at the situation. First,
Okay.
look at the situation and then respond to the situation, right? And preferably you have a gap.
Got it.
Buddha always said, before you react, there is always a gap for you. Use that gap to be good, do good, and respond in a friendly way, always. Never in an angry way, because if you respond in an angry way, anger only will come back, right? And anger can never be fought with anger. Anger can only be fought with love, is what he said. So if you react with anger or any other bad emotion, it will surely come back. So always with a smile, with a friendly way, you should respond to the situation. That's what he said. Thanks. Okay, so the next question is question number 9. Your point is, I can stimulate my oxytocin by trusting and receiving trust. I will build a pathway that expects to give and receive trust. Okay, my question now is, ma'am, but the trust is broken by others. So is it even possible to stimulate any happy chemical consciously? Is my question.
Okay, so the idea is that trust can be idealized. Like, in order to have trust, I need to have a perfect person to be with, and they have to always do what I want them to. So that's the idealized view. And when you have the idealized view, then everybody falls short, and then you are disappointed, and disappointment is like a real chemical response. So when you're disappointed, then you say, oh, I'm all alone, I'm unprotected, I'm unsafe. Who can I trust? You can't trust anybody. And so what I'm suggesting is small steps of trust, and both directions, give and receive. Give trust and receives trust. And small steps give you small amounts of oxytocin, and then your brain builds a pathway that says, I can create opportunities to give trust and receive trust in small steps. And those continual small good feelings add up to good feelings, which is much safer and healthier than saying, everything is awful, but someday I'm going to meet perfect people who agree with me on everything and always do just what I would do, right?
Okay. Which is never going to happen.
But wouldn't it be nice?
Okay, okay.
But everybody gets the idea that it should be that way. And I think partly because of the movies, you know, when you watch the movies, it seems
Right.
like everybody has this best friend and
Yeah,
they
right.
have
Right.
perfect trust.
Mhm. Okay, so in that case, whoever has been directing these movies and creating the stories, then they are unrealistic and they are counterintuitive, and they are not helping the people to cope up with their life. Then that because they're setting up some idealized situation which is not realistic.
Okay, so as much as we would like to blame the people who make the movies, I think a lot of it is when we see something in the movies,
Yeah.
see the bad, but we focus on like they have violins and happy ending. And so even though we know that this is a bad person, but they put their arms around each other and they smile and they're pals. So it's our longing for a happy ending that causes us to believe that other people are having this happy ending, even when on the movies you see all the evidence.
Yeah.
My favorite example, do you ever watch The Big Bang Theory?
Yeah.
It's
Not much. Yeah.
well, yeah. Well, anyway, my husband is a physicist, so, you know, we really like it.
Okay.
So, in Big Bang Theory, these people are good friends,
Okay.
but they don't necessarily treat each other like in a way that I would put up with.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly, you know, the lead character, Sheldon, I
Okay.
would never put up with his treatment.
Oh.
And Leonard is his male friend is always acting like this sad victim
Mm-hmm.
of this bad relationship. And the relationship goes on despite the bad treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So when a person watches that show, do they say, I wish I had a long term friend like that? But they don't really want to put up with that bad treatment,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay.
So it's being realistic.
Oh, okay. Thanks, man. Okay. So the next question I have here is this is related to point 11. Each drip of happy chemical is soon metabolized, so you always have to do more to get more. Okay. Now, what should we do to get more? Like, should we do some action just to get more chemicals? Because anyway, this is useful for my survival. So it is metabolized and gone. But is there anything else I should consciously do to get more of these chemicals?
Well, the main idea here is to be aware of that urge.
Mhm.
So, what I always say is like, even if you won the Nobel Prize, a
Yeah.
few days later, yeah, then you would feel like, oh, the joy
Okay.
is over. What can I do now? And
Right.
your brain will say, oh, you have to win another Nobel Prize. Because when you have a good feeling, your brain wants more of it. So, where it comes from is in the state of nature. You always had to look for food. And once you found food, then it was digested and you had to find more. So, because we find food so easily,
Mm.
then if I have a cookie and I feel good, then I want another cookie. But I know that I can't eat another cookie and another and another. So it's because we have so much energy left over after meeting our survival needs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we have to be conscious of this urge for more.
Okay.
And I think instead of hating the urge
Mm-hmm.
or following it, there's
Mm-hmm.
something in between, which is to say, I know that I'm working on a big project and I'm very excited about it, but if I work too much on this project and let everything else go, then there'll be consequences in the long run. And
Okay.
also, if I work on this project, then when it's over, I'm going to feel let down and maybe I'll eat a whole box of cookies. So it's like to anticipate and plan many small rewards. So the answer is always small steps.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're excited about something, do a little bit of it today and a little bit of it tomorrow. And then also do a little bit of your difficult projects rather than just the one you love,
Mm-hmm.
so that when you're finished with the project you love, then your difficult things will also be taken care of.
Okay, so ma'am, in that case, let's assume I'm in a neutral state now. I had a target, I finished it, I'm in a neutral state now. So now should and I also know I have four happy chemicals. So now should I balance my four chemicals? Okay, now this week let me focus on a little bit of getting a one-up position when compared to my colleagues, little bit, and for few hours let me set a target and achieve and be happy with myself. And for few hours, hug my son, my child, and be happy with my wife, and call my mom, and all those oxytocin generating things. So should I in my neutral state, should I consciously decide, okay, I'll spend an hour to get this serotonin, an hour to get oxytocin? I mean, it did not be specific, like I should be closer to my people who are closer, and I should win, and I should have a one up position, and should I aim my life in such a way that I ensure all these four happy chemicals or five happy chemicals secrete always? Should I plan my life in such a way that these chemicals flow in a little quantity every day?
Um, well, I would plan to spread my energy across those different goals, as you mentioned, rather
Wow.
than investing all of my energy in one of them. Because
Right.
most people are tempted to focus only on the one that they're already good at. So some people are already good at one, and some people are already good at another. So we're better off, spreading ourselves out, but also to some extent going after the one you love, but also to discover new ways of stimulating them. So a simple example would be, let's say a person gets a one-up feeling by gambling, but they know that gambling is not good for them.
Yeah.
So they need to discover other ways of having a one-up feeling.
Yeah.
So that's planning.
Okay, so now this is very interesting and very useful, I think. So now, I, when I'm in a neutral state and I don't have anything to do, then I should plan in such a way that I will ensure, like today, this week, this month, and this year, there is a continuous supply of dopamine. I mean, dopamine and endorphin and oxytocin and serotonin. Is that how I should plan my life?
Well, I'm not saying that you can guarantee that you're going to have them all the time.
Okay.
So I'm saying you have a decision of where to invest your energy, and you're already going to be doing this. You're just going to use different words to explain it. You're not going to admit to yourself, but you're already putting all your energy in going after dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, endorphin. You're already doing that. So the question is to be aware of how you're doing it so that you can do it in healthier ways. Like we talked about, many people go after the happy chemicals through negativity because it works in the short run. So then, however you're doing it, you're already doing it.
Okay. Uh, Fine. Okay, ma'am. So then, as you are mainly focusing on these four happy chemicals, uh, I should preferably, instead of only focus, see, for the people who don't know that these four chemical exist, whatever their lifestyle is going to be there. And there could be somebody whose lifestyle is that he's like an introvert, is never interacting with people, he hates people and all those things, whose oxytocin is not secreted and is not depleted. So in that specific person, obviously if he knows that okay, I'm professionally, I'm successful, and I'm better than my peers, I'm always getting a one up position, and and I'm working hard and my endorphin is good, but still I am lacking, it could be because of the oxytocin, then maybe I should call my mom, hang out with my family, take a break, and ensure this oxytocin also secretes. Is that how we should balance our life?
Yes and no. I definitely agree that we should try to balance the one that we think we're missing.
Okay.
However,
Yeah.
not necessarily by calling your mother, because each
Okay.
person has to do it in the way that meets their real needs. So if calling your mother
Yeah.
meets your needs, fine. But if calling your mother doesn't meet your needs, then you have to do it in a way that meets your needs. For example,
Yeah.
we want to feel trust. We
Okay.
want to trust the people around us. We want to be with people we trust. So, how can we be with people we trust? Well, after your teenage years,
Mhm.
hanging around your mother is not going to meet your needs.
Okay.
so, so the idea is, how can we build trust with the people in our lives? And and again, the answer is in small steps. So I can be honest with myself, like if this person you mentioned, that they don't trust any of the people around them,
Okay.
and the people around them don't trust them. So they have to build trust in small steps.
Okay. So that his oxytocin is consumed, at least for his benefit, right?
What? No, I think his oxytocin is not released. He's not producing and releasing oxytocin because he's not feeling trust.
Right. So if he has got a target, and if he builds trust with others, like by helping them or whatever, like
Yeah.
if he goes an extra mile to work harder to find out new ways to build trust, then his oxytocin will secrete. Then he will be at peace with himself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But when you say to work harder, like the idea that you always have to do more and give more,
Yeah.
maybe he doesn't feel trust because he's already feeling like he's doing more than the other person is doing. See, it depends on the individual. Many people,
Yeah.
they are bitter because they think they're always doing things and the other person is not doing for them.
Hmm.
So the answer is not to do more and more and more. If you do that, it's like enabling or codependent. So you have to find a way to be in a reciprocal relationship, which means you take a small step and then you wait for the other person to take a small step toward you. And then you take another small step toward them. And sometimes the way to do this is by establishing rules and boundaries. It doesn't mean, oh, I'll do anything for you. That's not trust.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Related to this, my question is, um, uh, is there, okay, now we have this four important happy chemicals. Now if in the situation where I am in, if I don't get any chance, let's assume I'm in a situation, or okay, let me even go to a case of a prisoner. Now there is a guy who is in a prison, let's assume he's supposed to be there for 10 more years, then uh, there is no oxytocin for him going to flow, and there's no requirement for any dopamine because he's getting bored and all those things. Then what happens to all these happy chemicals inside him? Like he's in a prison cell, he's not talking to anyone, he's not interacting, and there's nobody meet him and all those things, right? So what happens to all these happy chemicals when it is not being used or depleted?
Well, first, I'm not going to suggest that prison is happy. Prison is unhappy, which is why we should obey the law. Okay, so that's the first thing.
Yeah.
However, what if a person finds himself in prison, they will still look for opportunities. They will look for ways to give and receive trust, which is why you hear about gang behavior in prisons, because that's a way of giving and receiving trust. You hear about all these prisoners writing letters to women who want to marry them. You hear about prisoners trying to have visits with their children, or trying to be good in prison so they can get back to their children by being responsible in prison. So there's always steps you can take. So there's a lot of talk these days about, like, I'm a victim of circumstances, but there's always decisions you're making and steps you can take. And they're always motivated by this urge for dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin.
Okay, so for these prisoners, I mean, unlike most of us who are outside, for these prisoners, this carrot is hanging in front of him, but there's absolutely nothing he can do. Like, he can't meet his family, and then he can't have much goals other than whatever he can go inside, right? My point of view is, when all these chemicals are unused, right? So when these chemicals are unused, will it create any problem in the body?
I think they just don't get produced.
Oh, so it's not like it keeps on adding in the body, and I mean,
no, I think it just doesn't get produced.
oh, it just doesn't get produced. So it doesn't, like, it's not like a tank where dopamine keeps on filling and there's no way to explode, and it'll, oh, I see. Okay, thank you. Okay, that is my question. So I assumed earlier that all these chemicals will be in multiple tanks. The way you show in those four colorful chemical containers, right? It'll always flowing and all those things. So I thought they're always keep on, when we eat food, it is converted to this chemical, and they keep on adding that. There should be a way for you to consume them and then like send them to the blood. Otherwise, it will explode.
No, you only produce them when you need them. I mean, we have a little bit of a reserve tank, and when the reserve tank is used up, you produce more.
Okay, sure. Thanks, ma'am. Just give me 1 second. Just opening this thing. Okay, I'll go to the next question. Your list number 12. Each step towards an unmet need stimulates happy chemicals. So continual small steps are way to feel good. Now my question is about the fear of missing out or losing out, and which might create a stress, right? So now, if I have multiple unmet needs and which creates these happy chemicals, then is cortisol the reason for the fear of missing out or losing out then?
At first, I'm interested in, I know you have a son. Did you hear this from him? This fear of missing out? I know it's an expression with young people.
Okay. No, but we were also young ones, right? So we also know.
Well, it's called FOMO, fear of missing out. They call it FOMO.
Okay.
And most people don't like the word jealousy, but it's really jealousy. So FOMO sounds sophisticated and jealousy sounds bad. So that's my daughter calls it FOMO. Okay. So here's the thing. Social comparison is a very strong driver in mammals because of, as you know, natural selection and reproductive success. So all the books about the social behavior of mammals show a lot of competition. And when you are missing out, then your genes don't get passed on. And then your genes would just not be part of the gene pool. So the genes we've inherited are the ones who said, "What? I'm missing out? I got to do something." Okay? So that feeling of I got to do something, that's cortisol. So cortisol gives us that oomph, that motivation to relieve the threat, and not being included in a social interaction is a threat to the survival of your genes from the monkey perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So natural selection built a brain that alarms you. Oh no, I'm missing out. My genes are going to get wiped out.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I are not consciously thinking that,
Okay.
but you can see how a teenager would be thinking that, right?
Mm.
And they're not consciously trying to reproduce, but from a monkey perspective, when they're missing out, they won't get to reproduce. Now, let's go into the future when you're a little older. If you're trying to advance in your career, but your work is not respected or getting attention, you have that fear of missing out. And it's the same thing because you can't get married and have children until you get a job, let's say. So it's the same sense of urgency.
Okay.
Now, if you want to take it like you've used this example of a big car, or
Yeah.
let's no, where I live, nobody cares about cars, but let's say a vacation, right? Your friends have gone to a Caribbean island and you
Mm-hmm.
see the beautiful pictures and
Yeah.
yeah. So let's think, when you see their pictures, like you imagine yourself like, ah, I'm so relaxed. And
Okay.
then you imagine that they're relaxed and you're not. So again, it's like that survival feeling. Like, I want that feeling of being relaxed also, because again, that gives you more energy, and your brain is always in a hurry to pass on its genes. So it's looking for more energy to do that.
Okay. Ma'am, I just want to go deeper here. So if I see in Facebook this friend who is in a beach and relaxing and sipping some juice, and then immediately, like, what is my problem? Like, why should that, like, how am I not going to live? Like, how am I going to die? Like, why there's a threat for my life?
Yeah, okay. um, and when we say your life, it depends on the individual.
Right.
Like sometimes if I see that person sitting on the beach
Yeah.
and I think, oh, I wish I was just doing that. And then I think, for me to get to that beach, it would
Yeah.
take 10 hours for me to get there.
Right.
Whereas if I just want to relax, I could relax right now, but I'm
Yeah.
not giving myself permission to relax. But it looks like that other person has permission to relax. They see, relaxing is a dangerous thing because in the state of nature, you can
Yeah.
only relax when you find a safe turf. So
Right.
when you see this picture, it looks like your neighbor has found a safe turf,
Right.
but you are telling yourself that you haven't found enough safety to um, relax.
Hmm.
So, for example, tomorrow morning when I wake up, I can work on writing another book and promoting my book and talking to readers. Or
Yeah.
I could just sit in a chair and say, okay, I'm going to just relax.
Right.
So, what would happen if I just relax? Then I'll tell myself, oh no, then what's going to happen to me if I just sit here and relax forever? I'm I'm going to be ignored. I'm not going to have anybody interesting to talk to. I'm going to get bored. So we think of threats when we're doing nothing. So part of us wants to relax and part of us thinks of threats when we're doing nothing.
Okay. But all those threats are like those carrots. They're not real per se. They're only in my mental model, in my mind.
The part of it that's real is that everyone is going to die someday. And
Okay.
so everyone has a limited amount of time
Right.
to do something. So every
Mhm.
minute we're saying, would I feel better by doing nothing in this moment or by creating something while I
Oh,
have the energy,
mhm.
right?
Right. Okay. Thanks, ma'am. So now, as we're discussing about this Facebook, uh, what is your insights and understand about how this Facebook company plays with the emotions of the people by pitting against each other? How they're playing with the emotions, and then I've seen like people who log into the Facebook at the end they will be unhappy, even though it gives little bit happiness. In totality, in whole, it's only unhappiness is what they end up with. So from your point of view, the sharing in Facebook, uh, how is the Facebook as a company manipulating people's emotions to bring more people inside that? And how are people like how is that people's emotions are manipulated, are like affected by themselves?
So I don't agree with this theory. I know that you hear it everywhere this year and
Yeah.
it's just repeated constantly. I
Okay.
think it's wrong. And
Mhm.
also, I think that every year or two, there's a different fad. Like, remember 2 years ago, the crisis was the kind of bacteria you have in your digestive system. And it was like a crisis. You didn't have the right bacteria in your digestive system, you
Okay.
know? So then before that, it was McDonald's was tricking you into
Yeah.
eating McDonald's. So
Correct.
this is basically the socialist worldview that instead of taking responsibility for your feelings, that you blame a corporation, you
Okay.
blame anyone in authority, and
Mm.
this has become the standard thought frame for people. I'm never responsible for my feelings. It's always somebody in power is responsible for anything that happens to me. And I think it's unhealthy, and I think it's especially unhealthy for kids.
Right. Right. So it's unhealthy for kids then. Uh, face. I mean,
No, I think it's unhealthy for kids to
to
be
blame.
taught that if you waste 3 hours on Facebook and get
Yeah.
jealous of your friends, that it's
Yeah.
Facebook's fault. It's not Facebook's fault, it's your own fault. You have
Oh.
to develop the character and the mindset to
Okay.
control your jealousy and to control your distraction. We are
Oh.
responsible for our own brains.
Okay. So even whether it is physical world or this virtual computer based online world, in both places I am responsible for my emotions, my
Yeah.
emotions.
My emotions and my actions. So,
Oh, okay.
for example, this is the funniest example. 10 or 15 years ago, there was a movie called Super Size Me, which was about how it was McDonald's fault that people were obese. I don't know if you remember that.
Okay.
So my kids who were teenagers then,
Hmm.
they they were visiting their aunt. Oh, remember 10 years ago when everybody was having that during the housing crisis,
Yeah.
whenever a person didn't pay their mortgage, it was always the bank's fault for tricking them into
Yeah.
borrowing the money.
Yeah. I
So
remember
it's
that. Yeah.
everything is the company's fault.
Yeah.
So my children had a dinner with their aunt, and
Hmm.
they learned
Hmm.
that every day their aunt went to Starbucks and
Yeah.
she would have a coffee with 4 pumps of sugar syrup.
Okay.
And my kid and she gained a lot of weight.
Hmm.
And my kids thought that this was terrible, and
Hmm.
they thought it was Starbucks' fault that she was having 4 pumps of syrup in her, right?
Oh,
So my
see.
kids had been indoctrinated because remember during the financial crisis,
Yeah.
everybody said, "Well, we're all wasting too much money on Starbucks." So all of a sudden it was Starbucks' fault that you weren't saving your money.
Oh, I see.
Right?
Okay.
And it was
Uh,
McDonald's fault that you were eating junk food. So my kids are surrounded by this mentality that it's always the corporation's fault. Whatever you do, it's you're never responsible for your own choices. So I tried to talk to them about that, and they were very hostile, of course, because I think in their view, if they hold their aunt responsible for her choices, then
Yeah.
that would be criticizing. It would be mean. It would be intolerant and lacking empathy.
Wow.
So this is unhealthy mindset, right?
Okay, okay, fine. So I learned very important thing now that every human being has to take care. I mean, they should be responsible for themselves and their decision, right? It's not the cigarette selling companies responsibility that I smoke. It is not the alcohol selling company that I am like I am become drunk. Okay, it's not Facebook fault that I spent 3 hours in Facebook. Okay.
And the now it's the latest one is it's the pharmaceuticals fault that I take pills. Right?
Yeah, actually, I heard a lot. I believed
Oh
in
yeah.
you. I
Oh
believed
yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. This is totally the mindset now. Yeah.
Fine. Actually,
Oh,
I'm
and you know what's the worst one? I'm sorry.
yeah,
If a teacher gives me a test and I
yeah.
have an anxiety attack, then I don't have to take the test. And
Right.
then it's the teacher's fault for giving me anxiety. It's
Okay.
crazy.
I see. I see. Okay, gotcha. Thanks, man.
So I'm sorry I interrupted. Do you remember what you were going to say?
Uh, no, the same thing. I mean, yeah. So no, I learned this. I mean, even like most of the people, I always thought if the cigarette companies don't manufacture cigarettes, there will not be smokers. If the alcohol companies stop making alcohol, then life will be better. It is their mistake. It's not my mistake. Is what I would have blamed. Even Facebook till 10 minutes ago, I was always uh, heard that Facebook is a very corrupt organization which manipulates people's emotion and they make money. It's a $1 billion company, and their only benefit is to manipulate people, is to divide people, show selectively to people, and then manipulate and take money from the politicians and show to the people the different faces. I mean, that might even be possible, but still it's my responsibility, and I should be accountable for my decisions. That I should know how much I should trust Facebook message, a WhatsApp message, a governmental message, and then what is the source of information? Should I trust a newspaper or a Facebook or a WhatsApp forward message, which incites lots of violence? I've heard. So at least in the online world, whom I should trust, I should do some homework. Like at least uh, instead of believing blindly, at least I'll go and spend 2 minutes in a Wikipedia article to check is this valid or no. Because at least comparatively, Wikipedia is like more truthful than a WhatsApp forward and all those things, right? So uh, I will spend more time to find out the source of the information.
Let's just say jealousy existed before Facebook, and distraction and time wasting existed before Facebook,
Okay,
right? Right.
it's an old problem. Thanks. And also, there's one similarity I'm seeing from Buddha and yourself is Buddha also says you are responsible for your actions and your
Yes.
reactions
Yes.
and your life. And don't believe in God, and there is no savior, there is nobody. You are responsible for every action. And then there's lots of steps before your thought comes and all, right? So like even somebody says he's a big believer in God, so then Buddha says, have you seen God? He says, no. Have anybody in your village seen God? No. Have anybody in your country seen God? No. Then why do you believe that? It's what simply says. You believe in yourself, work hard, be good and do good. Just don't believe whatever the source somebody else said, I've seen God and all those things. So in that sense, to take total accountability and responsibility for every action you do is, I'm seeing a similarity between you and Gautam Buddha.
Yes. However, to put it in the modern world,
Yeah.
there are many religious people who believe in personal responsibility, And there are many atheists who don't believe in responsibility. All of the atheists I know, they are into this. It's always the corporation's fault, the government's fault. It's my genes. Blame genes for everything. So all the atheists I know, they take no responsibility for their lives. They don't even believe in free will anymore. So then now it's the religious people who believe in free will. So I agree with when you're saying in the past when people said, it's not my fault, the devil made me do it. So that's not responsible. But many religious people do take responsibility, and many atheists take responsibility, but many do not.
Oh, thanks, ma'am. We have 5 minutes and two more questions.
Good.
Question number 19. You say cortisol builds neural pathways that help you avoid similar threats in the future. It alerts your brain to scan for threat signals, and more cortisol is released when you find them. So, ma'am, this I agree. If here now, if there's a threat, I understand a cortisol secreting and then I taking an action is good. But in real life, many people, including me, always a thought comes which is about a failure which happened in the past,
Right.
and repeatedly it comes, and it could be my failure, an insult, or a death of a close relative. So now the point I'm trying to make is the cortisol might secrete even though there is no immediate danger, right? It's a failure which happened 10 years ago, it might never happen again, even the other guy is dead, but still that thought comes, then my the thought of failure is rekindled, then I want to react, and then I want to pacify myself, and all those things go. So how do I react when I 100% surely know that the situation is not going to happen, but my cortisol is flowing, like there's no action required, but then how do I react then at that situation?
Well, I think very similar to what Buddha said is to be aware that this feeling is not created by the present circumstance, but is created by the old neural pathway. He didn't say neural pathway, but the important thing, I think, is to recognize that this is normal and natural, because people have gotten the idea that like this is a disease, a disorder. So the bottom line, our ancestors, they lived with fire. And when they were young, they learned that if you touch fire, you get burned. So the next time you go near a fire, you don't have to touch it, because just when you get close, you anticipate the pain. So our brain is designed to anticipate pain because it protects us from harm. So there's nothing wrong with anticipating pain. But in the case of fire, I know why I was anticipating pain, because I see the fire. But in daily life, a lot of times you don't know, like you get this bad feeling and you don't even know why you got it, because as soon as something scared you, you shifted to something else so fast. I catch myself doing this all the time. Like, let's say you're reading your email and you read some bad news, but there's nothing you can do about it until wait till tomorrow. So you go on to the next email, but you still have that bad feeling in you. And then you don't remember, you've already forgotten the last email. So now you're projecting bad feeling onto the next email and the next and the next. So whenever I notice that I'm feeling bad, I stop and I say, let me remember, why am I feeling bad? Oh, that's right, because 10 minutes ago, somebody told me this. And then I have to stop and I say, okay, I need to deal with the fact that I'm upset about X, and how can I deal with that? So then I say, okay, I'm upset about X because maybe I'm powerless to do anything about it, and we don't like to feel powerless. But maybe I'm upset because it's a disappointment. But then I say, okay, now I have free time on my calendar, so I'm going to do this instead. So just a way to be conscious of what the frustration was instead of running away from it. That will make it go away faster.
Okay. Related to this, I also heard, ma'am, like any chemical, it stays in our bloodstream for a few more minutes. So
Mm.
even if it is cortisol, it will take few seconds or up to a minute for it to completely mix in the blood and vanish. So you should
Yeah.
probably slow down, right? Observe and
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, now
Yeah.
related to this, ma'am, Buddha has recommended multiple types of meditation. One of them is called Vipassana meditation,
Mm.
wherein which people go and stay for a week. They don't speak to anybody. For more than even for a week, the food will be provided. There no phones, no books, nothing. Their only job is to sit and watch a automatic thought coming and a reaction, chemical reaction happening, and then watch. Keep on watching. So now they get this knack of watching a thought and its chemical reaction and not reacting, not even responding, because there's no response required, because you are in a closed room, right? And food is being provided, a bed is there, everything is taken care. Your job is 1 week, don't speak to anybody,
Mm.
and have
Yes.
food will be
Yeah.
provided.
It sounds like a great thing. However, many people, if they're left alone,
Yeah,
they'll remember, okay, I remember what that person said to me. And
fine.
then I think of my side of the story. And in my mind, it's like I'm in front of a jury and I'm repeating my side of the story over and over and over. So it's important to have that awareness
Hmm.
that if you spent that whole week just
Yeah.
repeating your side of the story.
No, no. See, repeating is what normally we do. But there,
Mm,
they always say just observe. No reaction, no response is required. Observe,
mm,
observe, observe, keep observe. And know that you are neither the thought nor the reaction. You are
mm.
neither the thought.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they can like be detached. Never
Mm,
ever, neither hold on nor push it away. Neither like, detachment or repulsion. So
mm,
they get this knack or habit that this is just a thought and this is just an emotion, this is just a carrot hanging and it is not real.
mm,
But
mm,
so that is one recommendation. So similarly, do you know multiple types of meditation, and by any chance do you recommend any type of meditation to help to recognize that this carrot is never ever can be consumed? You just has to need, and you need not worry, like only act if it is required. Like, do you know any types of meditation? Do you recommend any types of meditation to get this knack that it is just a body chemical, the other guy is
mm,
making you
mm,
angry, don't slap him, just you have the charge to smile and use good words. Like, is there
mm.
any technique
Not more than what we've already said, but I respect any of those techniques you refer to if they work for a person. But I
Okay.
personally don't believe that the carrot is always fake because in the state of nature, you do have to find carrots. And so it is natural to take steps to meet your needs. I think that's healthy. So if I said, I'm never going to do anything for myself, I'm just going to sit here and wait for people to put rice in my rice bowl,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's a source of happiness. If Buddha thinks it is, I think it's because they're going around saying, I'm more spiritual than you are, and they're getting some sense of importance out of that, or they're
Okay.
getting a sense of security out of it. I don't know what they're getting out of it, but I think they're getting something out of it. And I'm not saying that we should endlessly want more carrots, but
Mm-hmm.
we should enjoy getting the carrots we need instead of waiting for other people to give us carrots. How's that?
Uh, sure, but the emotions per se are like those
Yeah.
unreal characters. The emotions per se, yeah, the external world is real. We should get food, clothing, shelter, all those survival things we need. But all of these emotions are just unreal characters, which
Well,
will
but
lead.
not all of them, because when you are trying to get a carrot and then you worked very hard to get it, and when you get there you see that the carrot is rotten. I think it's 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 realistic to be disappointed. And You can
Yeah.
allow yourself to have emotions. So I'm not saying we should stop all emotions.
Right. Okay. But
I'm gonna
emotions
have to
are.
get going.
Thanks,
Yeah,
ma'am. Thank
yeah, we don't have to overdo the emotion. Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Okay, great talking to you.
Like,
Take care.
bye.